Welcome back. This is round number 4 with Amulet Titan Valakut. So I have here a very interesting hand. You can see that I have the access to Cavern of Souls, which is probably only going to be helpful from playing against a control deck. Other than that, I just have a bounce land, a scout, and a bunch of ramp. This Once Upon a Time is the only reason I think this hand is very good. And that's because it can find me a primetime, it can find me another land, it can do something. I do have a couple redraws with the Explorer, and here's a moment where Explorer is much stronger than, say, Azusa. Like, 2 Azusas in this spot wouldn't be nearly as powerful. Granted, I'd rather have 1 Azusa than those 2 Explorers, because then I could do a turn 3 Titan if that Once Upon a Time found me a Titan, but we're digressing there. So, my opponent is on the play, I am on the draw. Let's see what we're up against. Marsh Flats. Okay. So it's Once Upon a Time. I grabbed a bounce land. I could have grabbed a field, but I think I just need to progress my mana here. And just in case I'm up against a deck with Thoughtseize or removal, I wanted to put the turn 1 ramp down so then I can explore a ton next turn. I do draw Prime Time, which makes me very happy. So now I'm just in the market to find a second Amulet, and I can actually win right now. So I use the green mana for Scout, play the Scout, and just replay. I did not find a bounce. I did not find another Amulet. I didn't want to keep digging with my Explorer to try to find another Amulet there. Instead, I just want to set up to a spot where if my opponent taps out, now I can pact for an Azusa, play Primetime, and get very, very far ahead. At this point, I'm just going to pause one more time. At this point, my opponent is on Mardu, right? It's all I know about them. Seasoned Pyromancer, Marsh Flats, Bolt. That's all I've seen from my opponent. So I don't know, and Blood Moon is just like screaming in my ear. I do have an unfortunate draw where I draw the Slayer's Stronghold, which means that it's a little bit harder to really do too much right now. Especially since I don't have like a Castle Garenbrig. So instead of being able to attack with my Titan, what I can do is I can play Titan and fetch two forests, which can make it so that I can not die to Blood Moon. I do think if my opponent had Blood Moon, they would have played it last turn, but either way, I think it's just still a decent practice to get into. My opponent doesn't know that if they don't have like a Blood Moon or answer to this Primetime, I just have lethal, thanks to this Dryad here. And my opponent concedes because I just have lethal here with Valakut and double Amulet. Very good little combination to have. So, especially since with Valakut and Dryad, a really unique thing is Valakut actually can tap for like the white-red mana I needed for Sunhome right there. So I was actually going to be able to get Valakut and Sunhome, attack, get red off of Valakut, get white off of Valakut, get anything off of Sunhome, and get another mana right there. That's my 4 mana plus my Sunhome, double strike. And then I get two Valakut triggers, and then I play a bounce land or I play any land, second main, and get to deal 3 more, although my opponent is pretty dead at that point. So that's game 1. Treating this matchup as if they are a Blood Moon deck. You can see this is what I sided. I sided out my Scouts. I did not side in Baloth. I was not expecting Liliana of the Veil. I was more expecting things like Blood Moon. Not really worried about Dismember or anything like that, just bringing in the Rexage, the Ramanop, typical things that as if I'm worried about my opponent Blood Mooning me. Tracker did come in because Tracker is an extra threat. Now, of note, Cavern came out because Cavern and Scout are really like the 1-2 punch, giving an extra green mana for turn 1. So that hand did nothing till turn 3. This hand is meh, but I do have a Rec Sage, a Basic, and a Tracker, and if I'm expecting my opponent to Blood Moon me, I guess this is okay. So I'll play the Misty to grab an extra Basic. And now, I pause for a moment and go, oh, my opponent's playing Stoneforge Mystic Dreadhorde, just like I was playing in the Modern Streamers League to finish out my 10-0 run. So I'm very intrigued right now, and I'm realizing my opponent is probably not have Blood Moon, probably does have Liliana, and probably has Ashiok. Here's the Ashiok. I choose to fetch in response. I do not pact because I know it die. And I just put a 2-1 body in play because I recognize my opponent probably doesn't have Moon at this point. I also wanted to eat a Bolt, if possible, for the Rec Sage before I play the Tracker. Here's Stoneforge. Picking up nothing. At this point, my win condition is strictly Tireless Tracker, because Tireless Tracker does not care as much about Ashiok. Okay, opponent uses the Revolt trigger off of their Dreadhorde to kill my Tracker, and then they make a terrible, terrible mistake, and they keep just minusing with this Ashiok. So now they have to stay back on defense, because Ashiok normally has 5 loyalty, but is now down to 1. I know that they probably have a Batter Skull in hand, because they chose not to fetch with the Stoneforge. So I'm just going to put a 6/6 in play and make my opponent deal with it. So right here, I make a miscalculation. If my opponent, so I'm swinging for 6. So I'm saying, oh, if my opponent double blocks, very, very happy about that. That's 6 right there, although Ashiok would still live. I don't actually, what I should have done is also attack with Rec Sage towards Ashiok. That way, even if they double block, right, I still get to kill Ashiok. I know it's throwing away the Rec Sage, but unless they have some instant speed, target player sacrifices a creature type thing, like I'm not going to get punished for it. Even if they kill this Titan and that, as long as Ashiok dies, I'm happy, because then I get to Summoner's Pact, play another one. So I didn't attack with Rec Sage because I was too focused on a potential loss, which was clearly a mistake here. Opponent does double block, soaks up all of it, and then Culligan's commands, returning Dreadhorde Arcanist, and killing my Titan. And now I'm in a little bit of a rough spot where I shouldn't have been. So now I need to draw my Beast Within, or something of value here. Opponent Inquisitions away Excessive Summoner's Pact, and then Inquisitions away the other with the Dreadhorde Arcanist. Because I drew Dryad, Valakut is now actually a decent draw. I'm just trying to set up a spot where I can get lethal, but as of right now, I'm just not drawing anything. I didn't actually care too much about that Amulet there, because even if I drew a Titan, I could still attack with it. The Amulet was just kind of bait. And you can see right here, I am facing down lethal. So not attacking with that Rec Sage cost me this game too. Now I know my opponent is playing Planeswalkers, so specifically Liliana, so you can see that the Obstinate Baloth came in, and I cut an Amulet of Vigor since my opponent seemed very adamant about crushing that. And I'm just trying to play a mid-range game here. So I keep a land-light hand with plenty of ramp. If I draw a bounce land here, this hand is actually pretty good, and there's a bounce land. So I get to do a turn to explore and start pushing down the advantage here. Opponent does not have a turn 1 Inquisition, but they do, actually they don't have a turn 2 anything. Interesting. So just in case of that Blood Moon, I'm going to put that Misty in play to be able to fetch a basic forest. Opponent immediately just tries blowing up my land, and I'm just going to keep ramping and progressing my mana here. Cool thing about Dryad is that my Misty Rainforest can tap for mana without actually fetching. Opponent Thoughtseizes, takes my Prime, but I still have a Summoner's Pact. Notice I'm tapping that Misty Rainforest for green mana, just kind of a cute little thing. And here, since my opponent's tapped out, it's kind of a no-brainer, just get to attack. Because I still have a land drop for this turn, the Vesuva is the thing you always want to have in your hand. You can see this is very, very different when being on the play with a quick Titan as opposed to being falling far behind like I was in game 2. So here my opponent is conceding because I have a ton of zombies in play, a ton of Valakut triggers, and I have a Vesuva which can copy a Valakut and just ping my opponent even more. So here we got to kind of see that quick little combo Valakut kill here. So that was round 4. I'll see you all in round number 5.